all the operators who operate expeditions in the Denali National Park. There are only 7 of them who are authorized, and none of them were ready to actually take Kaamya into the expedition. They told she's too young, she's just 13, 14 at that time. She's an Indian, and on top of it, she's a girl, and we wouldn't be risking our expedition because Denali is actually a little a dangerous peak. It's
Success rate is about 30%.
it's actually viewed in comparison with Everest in terms of difficulty, though it is not as high as Everest. So they wouldn't, take her into the expedition. So we decided, okay, let's go in as a private team. We'll climb ourselves.
16-year-old Kaamya Karthikeyan has made this a reality. The teenager made history by scaling the world's highest peak, Mount Everest.
एवरेस्ट की चोटी पर भारतीय तिरंगा लहराया, देश का नाम रोशन किया.
She has become the second youngest girl in the world and the youngest Indian mountaineer to summit the world's highest peak from the side of Nepal.
Hi everyone, I am Kaamya Karthikeyan, a 16-year-old mountaineer.
Welcome to the Reliance Foundation family.
Thank you so much.
Ski mountaineering is a very, very exciting new Olympic discipline. Ski mountaineering is making its debut in the 2026 Olympic Winter Games in Milano Cortina. It's also making its debut at the Asian Winter Games. So the Asian Winter Games is happening February this winter, so 2025. And Kaamya has been selected to represent India in Harbin, China. But before that, she still has to set a lot of world records before getting there. In a couple of days, Kaamya is leaving for Antarctica. She aims to be the youngest person to complete the 7 summits, which is the highest summit in each continent. So she's done all of them, and now is just Antarctica left, and that'll be a really, really incredible expedition. So I'm sure you're very excited about that.
Absolutely.
And Kaamya's parents also here with us. They have been supporting Kaamya, and not just figuratively, but they actually, either of them has been present on each one of her adventures and summits. So it's really interesting to hear their point of view as well. What is the role of the family in sports? So we'd like to touch upon some of that. So yeah, I have a few questions for you, and I'm sure you already used to a lot of these. You live in Mumbai. I know that your roots are from Chennai. So how did you get into mountaineering? I'm sure you heard this, but just explain us the process. How does one do it if one has to start no sport like this?
I think for me, it started really young because my dad's in the Navy and he was posted in Lonavala, which is the lap of the Sahyadris. The Sahyadris were right in our backyard. So every weekend, right from when I was 3.5 years old, we'd crawl up these small trails to Duke's Nose and all of these other places. And I think that's where the initial interest crept in. But then my dad started going on Himalayan expeditions with the Navy, and he'd be gone for a month or a month and a half at once. So I used to ask my mom, what in the mountains keeps calling him back to leave us and go there again and again. So she said we should go find out for ourselves. And that's how I went on my first trek. And funnily enough, when we were not with just the two of us, when I was 7 during my school summer break. And when we were having an icebreaker with our team before we left for the trek, a lot of the experienced trekkers there said, the mountains call you back. And to me, it sounded really absurd because I was just 7. I was like, how can the mountains call you? But I think after that first trek, once you come back, you get back into the routine life, you feel that urge to go back there again. And so we just kept going back every year, and it just gradually went on to climbing bigger mountains and then doing the 7 summits.
How was it for you to get pulled into this whole world of adventure and mountaineering and
Firstly, to start with an honest submission that I was no outdoor person. I was not into physical fitness at all. But it was only the mother's instinct, to address her curiosity. So she really wanted to know what is there in the mountains. So we just set out on the journey together. As she said, the mountains did call us back again and again. And it also, mountaineering basically, proves your own endurance level. You keep pushing your limits, and it is a competition within yourself. So that was something which probably I thought will do good to her as an individual. So we kept going back. So I felt very accomplished with each climb. I thought I could do better, and the feeling was really okay.
okay, that's very interesting. This feeling of the mountains calling you back, what is it maybe for each of you that what is it that's calling you back at the mountains? Because it's something that not many people have access to, and it's there is so much romance about it, that the adventure, but some insights from you will be really interesting for everybody, from all of you in fact.
I think it's just being there, right? Especially for me, when I started out, it was like going on a family vacation without any distractions, no network connectivity. You're just there, you're bonding with your parents and you're having fun. So I think that is what interested me initially. But I think even after that, when you go out and climb in all these different places, you're climbing with international teams, you get to meet a lot of people. That was a really interesting aspect. And I think the mountains teach you how to be humble, because a lot of people assume that when you reach a summit, you're really elated, but you actually feel really humble because it teaches you what tiny of a speck you are compared to the mountain, right? And it makes you realize and appreciate all the comfort that you have back home. So you feel great about coming back and sleeping on your normal mattress after having slept on a sleeping bag for 2 months on Everest. So I think it was all of those factors put together for me that made it so interesting.
That's such a. How old are you again?
17.
That's one of the drawbacks. She's been in adult company far too long. But yeah, we've tried to keep her the child that she has to be. That was one conscious thing that we had to keep doing. But as she said, the most important thing is you start realizing the importance of all the things you have back home. It could be just having your brush in the morning. On a climb, when you have thrown away the brush because you didn't want to carry that 50 grams extra, it teaches you how important or what a luxury that brush is in the morning. So small things like that. And as she rightly said, it's never exhilaration on the top. And it is actually no happiness when you are climbing as well. You're only throwing questions at yourself. You can actually see figures of question marks in front of you. Why this? Why did I sign up for this? But when you come back to safety, back home, and you realize that, oh, I could go and do this, then it just overflows into all other facets in life. I look at it as a tool to sharpen my own skills at office, my own skills in family, her skills when it comes to school, because she juggles a lot of things. Academics, obviously, she's in class 12 now. So last 7 years, she's been in school all through when she was doing this. She learns Bharatanatyam, she learns the piano, she goes out with friends. She's able to juggle because that feeling that, theek hai, ye bhi kar lungi. If I can do that, I can do this as well. So that's one big takeaway, that people think it's a waste of time going and slogging it out so many days out in the wild with no productive work out of it. Many people do tend to think of it like that, but when you come back, you realize that it's a very useful training that you have done for your actual life in all facets.
Yeah, that's very very interesting. That what you're doing in the journey as a sports person, as a mountaineer, as an adventure enthusiast, it has repercussions on your day-to-day life.
100%.
So can you give one example of how maybe this has changed you, or were you always like this?
I think for me, it's a bit difficult to draw the line because I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. But I think it definitely brings in a lot of focus into whatever I'm doing, whether it's training or being on the expedition or planning or giving my exams. So I would definitely say bringing in focus, and it's taught me to plan really well, because with mountaineering, you need to think of each and every detail. You know, there have been expeditions that have reached their summit camp and had to turn around because they fell short of matchsticks. So even something that small has to be thought of. So you bring that amount of importance to detail to all other facets of your life as well, I think.
And so I assume you don't have like Instagram and TikTok on Everest. So how do you pass your time over there?
It is expanding.
The world is expanding.
What is your relationship with, for example, social media and things like that? That it's such an important part of kids' lives nowadays. Has this have you learned to manage the usage of these things, or
Yeah, I think,
or are you a normal person when you come back and then you disappear for some...
I think it's a bit of both. So I think definitely being away from any form of social media when you're out on an expedition kind of teaches you to live without it. So you're not completely dependent on it. But on the other hand, I have a lot of friends around the country. So I do use social media like any normal teenager to stay in touch with them, to talk with them. And I think also it's really helped me to share my journey with a lot of other people. So in the recent years, I've seen a lot more young Indian kids coming up in the mountaineering scene. So I think sharing our journey, putting it out there, using social media for that purpose has definitely helped. And like Dad said, it's all expanding now. At the Everest base camp, you get Wi-Fi. Once you go up higher, you can use a sat phone to send and receive pictures. And we climbed in Ladakh last year, and we were really surprised that we were getting network at about 5,600 meters altitude. So
maybe we have something to do with that, I think.
oh,
I think that's a big revolution.
absolutely, yeah. So I think it's definitely expanding, but obviously the mountains still teach you to be okay with being disconnected from the internet and with the rest of the world.
Right. So in the southern hemisphere, when you're going close to the South Pole in the winter, it's 24 hours of sunlight, right? So there's no day and night. What are some of the things that would be different, or that you see as a challenge, or that you are just looking forward to?
I think being there on Antarctica itself is such a huge privilege. Very few people get to even step foot on the continent. And of course, like you said, light being there throughout the day is both a boon and a curse. Boon in the sense that we can walk for long hours without having to walk in the dark, which is something that I haven't grown to love, even though I've been climbing for so many years now. But it's also a bit of a problem in the sense that you can't sleep without having eye patches on. So it's, I think, a mix of both. I'm really excited for the sledge pulling part of it. So Antarctica, we don't have any porters on the climb with us. So for our entire expedition, all of our equipment and food and fuel, everything goes on a sledge that weighs about 45 to 50 kgs. And we're pulling that with us through the climb. And it's not new to us, thankfully, because that is something we did back in 2022 when we climbed Mount Denali in Alaska. And I think that is something I'm really excited to do again. It's physically very challenging, but I think I have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. It was actually thanks to Gulmarg. We got introduced to ski mountaineering through
Sledge pulling.
practice for pulling a sledge. Because when she finished Aconcagua, which is the highest peak in South America, the next question was, what next? She was too young for Everest. She wouldn't get a permit. So the only one that could be done was Denali, and we kept writing to all the operators who operate expeditions in the Denali National Park. There are only 7 of them who are authorized, and none of them were ready to actually take Kaamya into the expedition. They told she's too young. She's just 13, 14 at that time. She's an Indian, and on top of it, she's a girl, and we wouldn't be risking our expedition, because Denali is actually a little a dangerous peak. It's
Success rate is about 30%.
it's actually viewed in comparison with
Comparison with
Everest
Everest.
in terms of difficulty, though it is not as high as Everest. So they wouldn't, take her into the expedition. So we decided, okay, let's go in as a private team. We'll climb ourselves. So in which case we had to train. And the biggest challenge why people don't succeed in Denali is because they're not used to pulling sledges on their own. When you climb in the Himalayas, there are people helping you, at least with your peripheral logistics. But on Denali, there's nobody helping you. So you have to pull everything yourself. So we decided, okay, we'll go to Gulmarg and train how to pull a sledge. We kept doing it for 2 years, 2021, 2022, 2020, 21 and 22. So
There's a literal definition of pulling your own weight. So this is where it comes from.
Absolutely. So yeah.
actually, she was pulling more than her weight.
Exactly. Yeah.
At that time, she was much more lighter. So she was actually pulling much more
Yeah.
than her weight.
Wow. So tell me, how was we met last year at the Khelo India Winter Games in Gulmarg. It's a very interesting new initiative, to support athletes, to give them that platform in winter sports. And you won how many medals over there?
A gold and a bronze.
A gold and a bronze, and a gold in
Gold in the vertical.
gold in the vertical and bronze in the
sprint.
sprint. Okay, so that's incredible. And tell me a little bit about how was this experience of competing at Khelo India, and what are some of your goals?
So I think for me, Khelo India was a very new exposure. Firstly, because mountaineering is not a competitive sport at all. So apart from a few skiing national games that I'd participated in, where I was not at a competitive stage for the podium, I think this was my first exposure where I knew I had a chance to win something, and I was going in with that idea. So it was definitely a wonderful first experience for me to be part of a game like that. And obviously we had some good competition as well. So it gave a lot of exposure into the game, seeing the other athletes, people who had been performing in that same sport for the last 2, maybe 3 years. So I think that definitely, and I think winning those medals and being there and experiencing that kind of led me to actually believe that I can pursue ski mountaineering more seriously and more actively in the future. So I think it definitely had a huge role to play in that. And preparing for the Khelo India Games gave me a lot more exposure into actually understanding ski mountaineering as a sport. Because before that, we were mainly using it only to train for mountaineering. We hadn't practiced it as a sport. So I think it gave me a lot of exposure and knowledge into the sport to begin with and start off with.
So now that you're into the high performance sports world, and we are of course so excited to have you here, what are some of the things you think that we are able to support you with? How do you see us helping you in this? And what are your thoughts on how things are now going to shape up for you?
I think obviously a lot of work that I need to do now, that I know that there is such a huge organization and so many people backing up me and my journey. But I think from now on, a lot of training on actual ice and participating in more international competitions, not just for podium finishes or collecting points, but also to see what kind of competition is there on the international standard for me when I'm initially starting off would be really important. So as of now, we've been training only in Mumbai, of course, because we don't have the snow setting in already. And we're leaving for Antarctica now. But I think once I come back, I would love to go out to Gulmarg or somewhere that has snow and train professionally. Because I'll be going for the Asian Games in February now. And I think while representing the country in an international competition like that, it's important that we live up to a certain standard. So I think just to get the amount of training right now to be able to set that standard and just to keep moving forward from there.
I would like to add to that it's, if not for initiatives like this, it would have been very difficult to start a sport which doesn't have much exposure in our country. I've been skiing for last 10 years, and she's been skiing for almost last 10 years. We've seen the sport slowly building, but it's never got that kind of push. It's a good start that has happened, and at the same time, the Reliance Foundation picking up winter game athletes and trying to support them. It's a big boost, and obviously we might not have snow and ice 24/7, 365 days in our country, but we certainly have people who can endure more, who have the fire and drive to do something in sports. Just converting that energy into winter sports would be a real game changer. I'm sure we will have real good medal prospects to see in the future. And
I completely agree, and I hope we can support you as you take this forward.
Lucky numbers.
You carry our country's flag forward. Yeah.